Pedro.
Thank you, Uta. So indeed, now today you get two for the price of one, so it's two of us together with you. It's an important session, there's a lot going on, and eager to take your questions. Of course, the preparation for the Council just tomorrow. Certainly the issue of migration will resonate. We'll come back to that discussion tomorrow. The decisions by the Council. We want ambition, of course, on the Pact on Migration. We were more ambitious in our reading than now what was agreed at the Council, even if it's a step on the right direction. But we will be fighting for more within the trilogues, because this was only a step. But we still have to conclude this legislation, and we want more on the Pact on Migration than even what the Council now just voted. And we can even go back to that if you wish later. We also hope that people's lives, European people's lives, will be at the center of the Council, and particularly the issue of the quality traineeships is one that is very important for the youngsters in Europe. We had thousands of youngsters here just last weekend, and that was exactly the topic, the most important topic there, and that's certainly something, that's an example of the kind of social Europe that we should have. We want European legislation. We will be voting on a report to call for European legislation, not just recommendations, not just words, but actual legislation on quality traineeships at European level. That's what the youngsters are asking from us. Again, important voting on artificial intelligence legislation, groundbreaking legislation. We wish to be the first big part of the world regulating artificial intelligence usage. We still hope to manage to get this through, even if EPP is starting to ditch from the compromises that we have negotiated. It's happening more and more now. It will be certainly the case. Mohammed will get back to that on Green Deal issues. That's happening also with EPP. We call on the EPP to stay within these big files, to stay within these big negotiations, at least I would say not only the ones that we have already negotiated and now they are moving themselves out of what they have already negotiated, but we still have important legislation in front of us. It's, okay, there will be elections next year, but we still have to deliver on the Migration Pact, on the reform of the economic governance if we want to avoid any kind of recession in the European economy next year. We still need the big political groups, and if we go only into campaign mode as they are doing now, it will be quite impossible to deliver on this. So let's get back to the table, let's get back to the agreements that were even already concluded and not ditching away from those compromises. That's our call to Mr. Weber. But as I said, it's also the case now with the Green Deal, but for that Mohammed will certainly take the floor and give you more information on that. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Pedro. Mohammed, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. I had the pleasure to be at the meeting 5 minutes before 10. This is a Dutch way. We're always 5 minutes before a meeting starts. So I had the privilege to listen to the last words of the president of the EPP. And I must say, I was very pleased to be there because, I mean, he still talks about the nature restoration law, that there's a structural opposition against the law, that there's a great support against the law. He refers to Macron. He clearly didn't understand what Macron said and what he meant when he raised concerns on some of the legislation coming from EU. And let's look at where we're standing. You know, is there structural opposition against the nature restoration law? I mean, the European industry for sustainable energy clearly states that the nature restoration law is in support of the goals of the European Green Deal and the Renewable Energy Directive. If we look at the 60 biggest European food-producing companies, they basically state clearly on a dead planet you cannot produce any food. And if the EPP is really concerned on the future of farming, I would say the biggest threats on farming are two. One is called climate change, and of course biodiversity crisis, and the second is the industrialization of farming. In the Netherlands, every 25 years, the half of farmers retire, stop. Not because of the European legislation or because of any other comment. I mean, it's just because the competition from the big industrial farms is unbearable for them. So if you really stand here and state that you are for the small and medium enterprise farming and family farming, then you have to support the nature restoration law, because the nature restoration law creates the conditions for these type of farms, the small, medium enterprise, family farms, to stay and exist in the EU. But if you're for industrial farming, if you are in favor of automation in farming, in favor of using many chemicals in farming to raise efficiency, and not talking about farmers getting a decent price, then what type of farmers are you supporting? The nature restoration law, of course, does much more than that. It's not only about farming, it's also restoring ecosystems. It's making use of the best way to decrease CO2 in the planet. It's nature-based solutions. It's restoring, getting balance back between how we use the resources on our planet compared to how we make sure that planet resource. In 1992, I was 7 years old, just to remember, because this is how long we're talking about nature preservation and nature restoration. 1992 is the year that the Bird and Habitat Directive was presented. For 30 years, member states have been delaying, waiting, not taking the measures that are necessary. Because of that, 82% of all nature is in bad state in the EU. For the Netherlands, it's around 90%. And now we say in 2030, 7 years from now, we want to make sure that we start restoring 20% of our land and seas, 20%. And this is going too far? It's really ridiculous. Last point that I want to make. If you look at the compromises that we wrote down, that César Luena, as a rapporteur, made, César Luena took into consideration almost every element of the EPP. I have a document here, it's a political analysis of S&D. On every page, it goes through compromise from compromise. And in every page, you find a statement, on behalf of EPP, this was changed. At the request of the EPP and other conservative politicians, this was changed, or this was adapted, page after page. And what my concern is not only about the nature restoration law, it's about where the political groups like the EPP that have a history in working together with S&D, making Europe a greater place than it is today, working for the future of the EU, not only industry, for farmers, for our citizens, that these groups that normally take responsibility walk away. They are with their mind in the next elections, with the next jobs. We are with our minds in the current chair because we still have a job to do. We will not throw away 1 year of good work as members of parliament just because a political group is affected by some far-right politicians and the electoral results in some member states. We don't have the privilege to wait and sit out 1 year. So if there's any comments that I hear from EPP that they could take if they have any changes on the nature restoration law, that could take them into the seat back at taking responsibility like we are doing, like Renew is doing, and many other political groups, the Green, the left, then they are welcome. We don't hold a grudge, but every concern has been taken away. And that's what annoys me. We work hard, content-wise, giving them what they ask, and then they still walk away, and then they talk about structural opposition. Just be honest. Talk about that on the elections. And then what really sickens me is that we know that we will have a majority for next Thursday in the committee. That now we hear rumors that they are threatening individual EPP members, that they cannot vote in good conscience for the law that takes away all the concerns that they had, that helps nature and farming. It's really, really sad that we are there at a stage where political groups that normally take responsibility walk away from that responsibility and turning their back to making Europe a great place, not only for farmers, not only for industry, but also for our citizens. I really hope that, thinking about the next job, we all do that. We don't know whether we are elected in 1 year. We need to think about our future. But please do not forget about today, because we still have a job today to do. And we, as S&D, will not walk away from that job, and we will try to find majorities. If it's with EPP, they're more than welcome. But if it's needed to do that, to find a coalition without them, we will of course take that opportunity. Fortunately, we have a majority in NV, and EPP is welcome to come back to look at what we've done for them in the compromise. It's a good compromise. It has broad support with the other political groups. They're welcome to sit back, but don't come with, it's too much of a burden, we're doing too much. We're doing what is necessary, and the Fit for 55 and the Green Deal is a package. If you take out one element, you make it less of a let's say, a complete whole package. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohammed. Now it's time for your questions. Please, in the back, please introduce yourselves and your medium.
Yeah, my name is Matthijs Schiffers from het Financiële Dagblad. I have a question for Mohammed CHAHIM. You seem to be very assured that you have a majority in envy. Well, the stories I hear that it might end up in a draw, 44 against 44. What is your conviction that you have this majority? What has changed over the last days?
Well, what has changed, I mean, not a lot, not significant, but I know that, for example, some EPP members would want to vote in favor of the compromise as it stands today. And that I heard rumors that if they do that, then they have a problem within their political group. Again, not based on substance, huh? Not based on substance. I challenge every EPP member to come with an element where they say it's not taking away their concerns, because I've been hearing their concerns from the beginning, and not only from them, also from some member states. But there's no solid substance point you can make that we did not take care about. I mean, César Luena really did his best, and I think the compromise as it stands is very solid, and therefore some members are willing to support that compromise.
Are there further questions in the room? Yes, please, El País.
Silvia, El País. When you've talked about rumors, Pascal Canfin has tweeted about these accusations that Manfred Weber has just strongly denied. What are you? I mean, it's quite a heavy accusation, saying that some EPP members have been threatened with being expelled or whatever if they vote in favor of the nature restoration law. Do you have any proof? Have you talked to somebody? I mean, how do you base this saying that the EPP is threatening its members if they don't vote in favor?
Again, I mean, these are the rumors I hear. I mean, rumors don't just pop up, but of course I understand that, okay, I'm going to give you one example. I was talking to some other colleagues that tried to convince them to vote in favor of the nature restoration law from different political groups. And every element they put forward, I countered with the compromise, and they were quite impressed. Some even told me, like, very appreciative that you called us. And then I said, okay, and now conclusion. What will you do on the vote? You know what their response was? Now I have to count the number of times I stated in the press that I will vote against. Because that's the problem. When you start communicating from the beginning that you're against and against and against and against and against whatever we do, then even if we take away those concerns, you still stay with the fact that you've communicated 20 times that you vote against. What I like about this parliament, compared to many national parliaments, it's that it's content-driven. That we don't have opposition just of the sake of opposition. We look at what's on paper, what are we going to vote about? And when people tell me, now I have to count the number of times that I stated that I will vote against this law, instead of taking the responsibility and taking a decision that helps us improve nature and making farming future-proof, yeah, for me, this is not the way I do politics. At the end of the day, I can be very vocal on wanting a change, but the moment I get that change, I will be supportive of that legislation. This is the culture in this House, and unfortunately, due to, let's say, political powers not necessarily very significant in this House. People are shifting, are being much more polarized, are being much more influenced, I'd say, by the extremes. And this is something that will jeopardize this, let's say, tradition that we have where political groups, even though we have our differences, but they don't walk away, they take their responsibility again, because we together, looking at the past, have done great things, also with the EPP, also with Renew. Look at what we did on Fit for 55. Was it easy? No. Did we walk away? No. We took responsibility, although we had our differences. And the outcome is a very balanced package that had broad support in the plenary, from the Greens left up to EPP. And this is something I would like to achieve for the nature restoration law as well. And I think that making it a political topic for the elections 1 year before a new parliament is elected, I think is throwing away a good year of where we can do a lot of good results. So I would say, please, EPP, come back, take your responsibility as you've been doing in the past. And if you want to take responsibility, we're willing to look at every of your comments. And then, if we have an agreement, start supporting again, instead of doing the opposition just for the sake of opposition.
Thank you. I think there were further questions in the room. Yes, to the left, and then we go afterwards to the right. Yes, please introduce yourself.
Hi, this is Cassandra Thomas for Context. I have two questions. The first one is related to the food security report. I heard that the Green and the Left plan to vote against this report. I was wondering, what about the S&D? Do you have clear indication of on the vote? Are you unified on this? That's it. And the second question is about the EU ethic body. I would like just to have your views on that, and also if there will be or not a resolution on the EU ethic body. Thank you.
I would suggest we start with the ethic body, maybe, please. Pedro?
Yes. Yes, on the ethics body, there will be a resolution. We voted to have a resolution, but for July, not for this plenary. It will be voted in July. It will be an opportunity, not just the debate, but particularly then the clear statement from this Parliament, we hope, in that resolution, that we are really unsatisfied with the way how things are going regarding these decisions or this proposal. We don't want another talking shop. We want a body with concrete powers. We want a body that can actually investigate, that can actually propose changes to the laws, to the rules, but can actually investigate in the different institutions, the different behaviors of the members. And that's not what we are getting from the Commission. That's certainly not what von der Leyen promised at the beginning of the mandate, and after all that was going on through the mandate, it's really, 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 I mean, the words, the correct words is, it's so frustrating that she continues in this path. We have been stating clearly we want more within the Parliament and in the institutions in general, and we are not getting it from the Commission, and that's certainly one of those compromises from the beginning of the mandate that she will not be able to tick. Von der Leyen is not delivering on the promises at the beginning of the mandate. At least it's our clear opinion from this group. Thank you.
Thank you. Mohammed, please.
On food security, we take that, of course, as very seriously. It's a very important topic. We still have a debate tonight in the group about this topic. Do I know how 100% of our people will vote? Of course not. Probably some will be against. I think the vast majority will be in favor of this resolution. But this is the way we do it in S&D. We have a discussion, and then there's always room to deviate if some feel to deviate. I know that some members have submitted some additional amendments to improve the resolution on several elements, and I think that's how democracy and how politics works. But I have no reason to believe that a vast majority will support the food resolution, and I will support it 100%. We had good preparation between, let's say, the Envy and the Agri people in our group, and I think it's a very balanced resolution. So I think we can have a discussion tonight, and I'm quite sure that we will support it.
Thank you. Eddie, please.
Thank you. Eddie Wax from Politico. Sorry to go back to the nature restoration law, but you've talked about how, you know, on the substance, on the content, you're 100% convinced that you are right, and you've even made overtures and compromises, you know, on every single point. Therefore, doesn't it stand that basically, you know, the S&D has been outplayed politically on this topic, and allowed the EPP to kind of take the Parliament to a point where this whole thing could be overturned on Thursday morning? So that's my first question. And secondly, are you seeing, you talked about sort of populism and the kind of traditional alliances in this Parliament falling away. I thought that was really interesting. Are you seeing evidence of maybe a new, maybe informal alliance between ECR, EPP, and some elements of Renew forming? And if so, you know, what does that say about politics at the moment? Thanks.
Yeah, so on the first question, again, we look at the substance, and I think the compromise as it stands now is a good compromise. I think a compromise that could take us into the trilogues, and we can try to have a nature restoration law that does a couple of things. First of all, restores nature, which is very important. It's quite a historic legislation. And second, also, you know, helps us shape how our future EU will look like. I mean, the balance between nature and farming and industry are all there. And I think it creates the conditions also for member states to really accelerate and improve and maybe even restore some of the elements that we maybe didn't give the attention that I think was needed the last 30 years, starting the Bird and Habitat Directive. So no, at the end of the day, if the compromise was not good enough for S&D, we will not sign it. Of course, I mean, it should at least have the support of our group. But again, my message was we try to compensate the critique and the concerns that exist for different political groups. I think we managed in doing that. But then walking away last minute, it's a type of behavior that we see at the EPP now again and again, and that worries me. Whether that also directly or indirectly means that there's a new coalition being made, it's not up to me. What we do as S&D, we are willing to work with every pro-European party that wants to take responsibility for very complicated decisions, because that's what we do here. It's not only a good news show, and where we only, we have to take very complicated decisions. I mean, phasing out the CO2 cars in 2035 is not an easy decision, but it's a decision that will take our industry in the right direction. And in 5 years, we will think that's one of the best decisions we took today. That's my conviction. So that's it.
Jump into this?
Yes.
I would like to comment. I was trying to ditch the stage to see if I could see you, Eddie. We of course, this is EPP's thing, the choice about the way they have been doing politics from the beginning of the year. They boosted this campaign mode. They started leaning to the far right. We will not comment on the divisions within EPP. That's for you. That's for the journalists, for the press. But the divisions are there. You have reported that from a number of countries. People are complaining and parties are complaining about this leaning towards Meloni, this idea that now that's the very good example even to be brought to 2024. We have seen it. There's a lot of people shocked in Europe. I would say that Mrs. von der Leyen could be also shocked about this, because it's the paying for fences, it's the paying for walls, now it's the climate denial. This is going on and on. This is the campaign mode for Mr. Weber. The divisions are there. The way he manages the divisions, it's his problem. But we are seeing this more and more. And this, it's not just a matter for after the elections, as it was here referred. And it was a bit of your question. It's even for now. As I said at the beginning, we need to reform the fiscal rules, otherwise recession is in front of us. We need to finalize the pact on migration, otherwise we cannot continue with this situation. It's not in anybody's favor, this current situation, in anybody's interest. So we need to conclude the laws on the Green Deal. We cannot go into this campaign mode, and it's of course about after 2024, but it's about now. This flirting and this marrying with the far right. In Italy, it's already taking a huge toll in Europe in general, and that choice from Mr. Weber, it's a very problematic choice. It's certainly shocking for us, but I'm sure it's for many Europeans. Thank you.
Thanks a lot to both of you. Are there further questions in the room? Yes, please.
One question on the procedure concerning...
Can you please introduce yourself?
Sorry. Jurgen Gevaert from Belga, the Belgian news agency. Question on procedure on the nature restoration law. If the text were to be rejected, how would the ENVI committee proceed? Would you postpone the vote in plenary in July? Or would you still proceed with the text? Would you still put it to a vote in plenary in July? Has this been discussed in your group?
We discuss all scenarios, like I think every political group. We try to see where we stand, but I'm really confident that we will have the votes next Thursday. We will proceed to the July plenary. I mean, again, I have no reason to believe that postponing will create a better outcome for the votes, because we're talking about people that are not rational when it comes to this text. We try to accommodate again, I would really love to, I mean, I have to talk to Cesar Luena. I mean, it's his text, maybe he can put it out there. But every page, at the request of the EPP, this was changed. It was introduced at the request of the EPP. On the request of the EPP, I mean, every single page. So what else do you want me to, what else do you want us to do? So postponing, if we could have, if postponing would mean we have a majority and we again look at some elements and maybe improve the substance if possible, I would do that. We would do that, of course. But we have no reason to believe so. I believe that as it stands now, we have a majority in ENVI, and I believe that if the members of my colleagues in Parliament would look at the compromises, would compare them also to probably the general approach of the Council that will be available by then, I think they will see that our proposal is a very good proposal and very good in the direction to get a good trilogue agreement with the Council and close this file before the beginning of the next mandate.
Final round. Do we have any further questions, or has everything been answered? Then I would like to say thank you to Pedro Marques, thank you to Mohammed CHAHIM, and thank you all for joining us today. Merci.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning to today's press conference of the Greens IFA, today with our co-president, Terry Reinke. Philippe Lamberts is joining the plenary debate with the president of Cyprus. And we have some points on the agenda to highlight. But first of all, there's a point to tackle beyond the agenda. So, Terry, the floor is yours.
Beyond the plenary agenda, but actually really much on the agenda of the European Parliament, because you know that we have a very important vote coming up this Thursday in the ENVI committee, which is going to be on the nature restoration law. And now you could say, well, this is just one law, but actually it goes really beyond that, because it's one of the crucial elements of the Green Deal and the whole strategy to cut emissions by 55% by 2030. And this vote is going to be very important for the discussion to continue. As you know, the Greens have been pushing very hard for this nature-related part of the Green Deal. First of all, because the cutting of emissions is only going to be possible if we are also going to go for nature restoration, looking at also binding more CO2 from the atmosphere again. Secondly, obviously, this is also an important question, not only when it comes to mitigation to climate change, but also when it comes to adaptation. We have recently seen the horrible floods in Italy. We have a lot of other examples where we can see that nature-based solutions are needed in order to adapt to the impact that climate change is going to have, the extreme weather events, and this is not something that is happening in 10 years. It is happening now, so we need to find political solutions to it now. And thirdly, and I've already indicated this law is not an alone-standing law, it's part of a bigger package, and if this law would be voted down by the European Parliament, it would be a major blow to the agenda to fight climate change together here in this European Parliament. I remember very well when a very big majority, an overwhelming majority in this Parliament declared a climate emergency. That was not a long time ago, just a couple of years. Now we see the tide is turning, especially the EPP is going against having a strong Green Deal standing up together to climate change. And we are very concerned by this. We see an attack on the proposals that are coming out of the Commission, and now the nature restoration law will really be the moment where we will see the truth of whether we will still be able to push through legislation until the end of this legislature. And now you will probably say, well, you know, you are the co-chair of the Green Group in the European Parliament. How surprising that you are saying this. But maybe you have seen that just this week, major cooperation, business came out in favor of the nature restoration law. And I quickly want to quote one aspect of it, where they basically say that we applaud the European Union as a global leader in enacting progressive environmental legislation which balances the need to protect nature with socio-economic priorities, driving and inspiring action and ambition internationally. This leadership is essential to signal globally that the European Union will continue to drive this agenda. And I really want to insist on this. This is not only about reaching the climate goals. This is not only about protecting our nature and biodiversity. This is also about whether we are going to be global leaders in the green transition, whether we are going to be competitive in the future. For that, we need this green legislation right now. The Greens are saying this, businesses are saying this, civil society is saying this, and we hope that on Thursday also a majority in the ENVI committee is going to say that, and we are going to fight for that. This is the vote that is going to be crucial for us. We are also going to have an agenda point specifically on the situation and the deterioration of rule of law in Poland. You have heard about a number of changes that have been proposed, amongst others the changing of the electoral law, but also installing a commission to investigate on Russian influence, which is now called this Lex Tusk. Which is basically there to intimidate the opposition, and even this commission has the power to force people to withdraw their candidacies and not to be able to hold office anymore. We know that there is a very important election coming up in Poland this year. We want this election to meet democratic standards. This is why we, together with the group leaders of the 4 other big groups here in this democratic groups here in this parliament, have called for a full-scale election observation by the OSCE. And also this debate will obviously have the aim of really pushing the Polish government to come back to a path of rule of law. We are very concerned about the state of democracy in Poland right now, and we are continue to stand side by side with the citizens and the civil society in Poland that are standing up against that. I'm going to leave it here. Sorry, I was quite long, but now I'm happy for your questions.
Thank you, Terry. Yeah, we are happy to take your questions. You also have the option to ask questions online. I see James Cantor is online. So are there any questions in the room? So, yes, please. Please indicate your name and media you work with. I think you were first and then second here in the second row. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much, Leo Lichtenwood, for context. I have 2 questions. The first one on the nature restoration law and the second one on the ethics body. So the first one on the nature restoration law, I'm wondering if, in case in ENVI committee the amendment to reject the proposal is not adopted, do you believe that there is a risk that that other amendments may be adopted and that may reduce the ambition of the law? And in which case, would you be ready to vote down the proposal if it is, let's say, denaturated and face a scenario like the one we faced last year with the Fit for 55 text in plenary? And the second question on the ethics body, so there is going to be a resolution, as I understand, and so this resolution that might be voted in July. I heard that some groups were not in favor of a resolution. Can you explain to me a bit how this played out and when this one decided? And also if there already has been some progress on the process, the internal process of the European Parliament to negotiate with the other institutions. Have you already agreed on a structure, some rapporteurs, maybe someone that will be sent out to negotiate with the other institutions? Thank you very much.
Maybe I start before it gets too messy. I start with the ethics body. I mean, the situation as it stands right now, and this is also why we were pushing so hard to have this resolution, that basically the proposal that the Commission is now coming up with is not at all meeting the standards of what we want in the European Parliament. And what we want with this resolution is basically to reiterate and to reinforce the standpoint of the European Parliament that this is not just a talking shop, but that this is actually a body that has authority, that has possibility to investigate, and that also has possibility to sanction, because otherwise, you know, we are basically creating another space where debates are being had, but where not real impact is generated. If I'm being absolutely honest with you, I don't fully know who voted how yesterday in the plenary vote, but we can check that and we can let you know. I think we had a quite big majority, but you are right, not all groups voted in favor. My suspicion would be that some groups didn't vote in favor because they actually don't want to insist, because we know that there are groups here in this House who are maybe not as ambitious and also as determined to have real accountability and to have real transparency when it comes to ethic rules. And obviously the strategy then would be to go with the Commission proposal now, because that's the easiest way to avoid real rules and real action and follow-up. On the question of how the European Parliament has been dealing with Qatargate, we had Roberta Metsola in our group last week, where we see that out of the 14 proposals that she has made, I think only 2 have been fully implemented, the others are on the way. Obviously, we are also going to put additional pressure that these 14 points are going to be implemented. But even if these 14 points are implemented, and let me be clear on this, we will still need an ethics body that can, in cases of conflict of interest, of other questions, be an instance that can have an impact and that can also provide enforcement, because we very often see that it's not really lacking rules in some questions, but that it's actually lacking the enforcement in the end. And on the second point, for us the main priority is obviously that the European Parliament is going to take a stance, that this proposal is going to be voted through. There are going to be specific discussions about amendments, but for us finding a majority to have this proposal as the standpoint of the European Parliament and then to go into trilogues will be the main aim of the vote on Thursday.
I'm Damiani from Agence Europe. I have 2 questions. One is about the coming back of Eva Kaili to the Parliament. What do you think about that? And second question is about what do you think about adding 11 seats to the Parliament to give more representations to smaller countries? Thank you.
Well, I think on the coming back of Eva Kaili, we have always said that, you know, it's on the competent authorities to investigate. Now they have taken the decision that she can do that and that she can even come to Strasbourg. So this is her possibility as an MEP. However, and I think that this is something that needs to be said, the investigations are still ongoing, and obviously we want justice to be found in these questions. And I have already indicated this in the previous question, that we are going to also take the relevant steps here in the Parliament, introduce new rules, but also enforce the existing rules in a much stronger way than in the past, so that something like this cannot happen again. And on the question of the seats, You know that the Green Group has always been a very strong advocate of having transnational lists. So we actually feel that the remaining seats, now that we are also discussing again the electoral law, we should keep a very close eye on the question of how these seats are distributed. But obviously, we are open for negotiations, and if there is a solution to be found, we will also not be opposed to that.
Thank you, Terry. Next question goes to James, who is joining us remotely. James, I see you raised your hand. We cannot hear you yet. Please press the speak button. Then you should be unmuted. Yes, we can see you now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Sorry about that. Thanks, Pia. Hi, Terry. On the Green Deal legislation and nature restoration in particular, you know, a lot of EPP talking points on this stuff is being driven by the perception that farmers are hurting and the supposed strength of these farmer citizens movements. What is the Greens' response to this focus on farmers? I mean, is it real? And is it something that one has to take seriously? Or is it something that is sort of being used to essentially, you know, oppose legislation that they simply don't want? Thanks.
Well, you might be aware of the fact that we are actually a group that has a number of farmers sitting with us. So obviously we really care about what farmers think, and we are also in close discussions with them on this nature restoration proposal, but also, for example, on the regulation on the reduction of pesticides. And yes, there are different positions. We are going to continue to say, and I think that this is very important, if you want to have farmers that are successful, if you want to have crops, you need healthy soil, you need to have pollinators, you need to have good water, you need to have a functioning nature. And right now we are really at a tipping point where we are endangering the future of biodiversity, the future of agricultural land in the European Union, and this actually makes it even more important in the interest of the farmers to now adopt strong green legislation, nature legislation. But of course, compromise will have to be found. That is why we are negotiating. This is also why a lot of discussions, including with our shadows or rapporteurs in the specific files, have been had. So for us, farmers play an important role, but in the interest of the farmers, it is important to push through this legislation right now. But I would like to say something on the position that the EPP has been taking. Now, you know that the EPP 2 weeks ago walked out of the negotiations on the nature restoration law. And to me, this is exactly the wrong signal that you can send. Because yes, there can be different views. EPP can take a different view on certain things. But walking out of a negotiation with other democratic groups as the biggest group in this parliament, as the group of the Commission President that has proposed this agenda and also this law, is really a sign that is going into the absolute wrong direction, because it means that they are basically having that they are trying to torpedo and to block now the progress that is still ahead of us, that they are trying to blow up the Green Deal as a whole. And this is something that you can imagine is not in the interest of citizens, not of farmers, not of anyone in the European Union, because when you are seeing a problem, when you are seeing a big political challenge ahead of you, you can do two things. You can either say, we are going to tackle it, we are going to address this problem, and we are going to find political solutions to it, or you can say, and this is what EPP is doing right now, basically the Greens are complaining too much and we are just going to walk out of the negotiations. If I'm being very honest, I would have expected better from the biggest democratic group here in this parliament. So I hope that they are, with the vote on Thursday, also going to find back to a constructive way of discussing and dealing with the legislation that is still ahead of us.
Yes, please.
Emmanuel Beretta from Le Point. What do you answer to Commissioner Vera Jourova when she said that there is no legal basis on the treaties to give such power you want to the ethics body?
Well, we have clearly pointed out in the initiative report that the European Parliament has adopted, by the way, with a majority, that there are ways. Of course, this can be discussed, but the proposal that the Commission is now coming up with is definitely jumping too short, for giving this body the possibility to actually do something that has a real impact. And then, you know, if you say that, then at least try to be honest and say, there is no possibility, so I'm not going to do something, you know. But to now have this as a hollow entity that is basically not going to change anything on the ground is not helping anyone. So for us, there is a possibility, there is a way. This has been highlighted in the initiative report that the Parliament adopted, and we are going to continue to push the Commission to go down that path.
Thank you, Terry. I don't see any other hands raised, so thanks all. Thanks, Terry. And have a good day and afternoon. Goodbye.